Move out of the way. Get out of the way. Thank you. Ugh. Hello, Jess. Who did I miss? Anybody? Do-do-do. 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 Hello.
Hey there.
How you doing?
I'm
I
tired. I'm really tired, but it was a good weekend. Figure out my camera situation here.
How you doing, Jess? What do I do with my pen? I have a pen. It's here somewhere. There it is. Whew, I'm cold. Oh, you screenshotted? Let me see if I can figure out how to do this to where you can see it. Ha. Oh, they're backwards. Go figure.
There we go.
It's okay. It's all
That'll
good
work
now.
as background for today.
Yes. Say no to evil orders. Those are a good thing. Kokai said he'd be a little bit late today. But I think we can move forward with this. He told us to come up with 5 questions, and I let Chris do that. So Chris came up with these questions. Some of them are from Kokai. How you doing, Seductive Tease? It's 2:00 in the afternoon here. I've already been to work and home. So, the first question up there is, how do I contribute to oppression?
Let me count the ways.
What's that?
While Vix is taking care of stuff, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about that first question right there because
Please do.
I'm gonna grab the low-lying fruit.
Okay. Let's start there.
Every time I earn a paycheck, part of my taxes that I pay in that paycheck go towards very oppressive. I want to be careful how I talk on here to not, make TikTok suppress us already right at the beginning using keywords.
Hey, Star.
We part of my tax dollars goes towards things that we do to people that we oppress as a nation. So I'm part of that just at a surface level, regardless, through my tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that's just the surface level. That's the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. One way that we contribute to oppression is by not saying anything, by not talking about it,
Yeah.
by not working towards solutions.
And as in the comments of many of your videos, by actively dismissing it and scoffing at it and downplaying that it even like, oh, come on, really? Ah, you're such a victim. By just refusing to acknowledge that it
Invalidating.
exists.
Yep. Star's got a good point. By using tech with batteries.
Man, Jesse Wells has a song. He's got a lot of great songs, but that's one of the punchlines of one of his songs. This slaves mining cobalt in a mine down in Ghana or something like that. And later in the song, he says, "There's blood on my jeans and blood on my phone. There's blood everywhere."
Blood everywhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Blood on everything I own.
It's true. It's true.
And I mean, like somebody commented before you really even got started, like something about, come on, I'm just trying to survive, or give me a break, I'm just trying to survive here. And yeah, I mean, you don't really have much of a choice but to contribute.
I'm just trying to survive, please. That is a sentence that people use to invalidate the complicity that we have in oppressing other people.
It ain't my fault. I didn't have no choice.
Right.
What can I do?
I'm just doing my job.
Do you want me to go
I was
hungry?
just following orders. It's all the same shit. Every time, same thing. Yep. To deny accountability. Yep. Being apathetic.
I mean, I get it. People don't want to, a lot of people don't want to not be empathetic. They really do, like, feel like they don't have a choice. Like, how am I going to eat? How am I supposed to eat? How am I supposed to feed my kids? How am I supposed to, keep the lights on? And those are all valid and legitimate feelings and valid and legitimate questions. And those are actually the questions that they need to be asking. They just
how can we survive while not oppressing people?
Yeah, they just don't need to be asking those questions as an excuse to not think about those questions.
Right.
Ooh.
But that's what they're doing.
Yeah, they're asking them.
We do that all the time.
Yeah. They're not really
Oh,
asking a question, you know, and that's what they should be doing, and they should be asking exactly that question. It's
mm-hmm.
mind-boggling.
So the next question on here is, what am I feeling in my body knowing that I contribute to oppression? I mean, it's depressing, honestly. Um, and it's frustrating. Overwhelming is a good one.
Yep. Because I grew up, and even, as an adult, I've kind of spent an overwhelming uh, percentage of my conscious life in
Mm-hmm.
a sort of flight mode. When have stimulus that would otherwise trigger fight or flight mode, all it really does is, um, I don't want to say it doesn't force, it pushes me to shift from flight mode into fight mode. So a lot of what I experience when I start getting uncomfortable and start experiencing that what I would normally, in a situation I would normally probably start experiencing flight mode, it is instead starting to pump adrenaline through my glands, which that happens in flight mode as well. Their flight and fight have a lot of similarities, but I have an intimate relationship with adrenaline. We'll put it that way, and I have become very keen on detecting when adrenaline is being released into my system.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that I was. It took a couple of years of therapy and some deconstructing several things for me to realize that's what was happening and that's what I felt. And so now it's a really clear signal when you just decide to believe in it, and like you're not just crazy, you're not just making crap up.
Yeah. Linnell asks, how do we contribute to oppression? Respectfully, of course. And Jess answered, but we can go deeper into this. Taxes is one way. Every time we go to work, they take taxes out of us that go to doing things that like oppress other communities. On a large scale, it looks like G side. Um, on a small scale, it looks like having the ability to call the police and possibly get black and brown people unalive. Another way is by buying things that contribute to oppression, like phones, technology, um, contributing by buying from companies that have appropriated and stolen from indigenous communities and keep them from getting water, like Nestle, which, by
If
the
you
way,
Go ahead.
next week, Nestle boycott. I guess it's this week. Hope that helped.
um, if you have a 401k, Roth IRA, any type of retirement account where you have funds sitting in a market account in the market, gain growing money, that is contributing to the oppression in a couple of different ways. One, that money's not circulating through the system, through an economy.
All right.
It's stuck. It's doing nothing but allowing other people to use it to make more digital currency. because they're not making physical things with it. And your money's not just sitting there, doing nothing, growing in an account. The Where your money has been deposited, that money has value, and the people who control that money borrow against it. They use that money for them because it's a business model, is their asset, for lack of a better term. I don't want to get too technical about it because it depends on who you're talking about. Hedge funds, banks, you know, there's so many players involved, and it's a different thing to different ones. But for lack of a
And they're all connected too. They end up all being connected to each other.
that's the only way it works. Yeah, they have to be. They all have to be interconnected in just the perfect kinds of ways in order for it to even work. So your money is sitting there in an account, and they're using your money to make investments and to grow and to make more money than you ever possibly could with your money because they control how this works. And it's a big club, and you're not in it.
Yeah. Hey, Star.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Hey, go to her shop and buy their merch. They've got 2 separate stores, one for America and one for Canada, because of the tariffs
I can
and stuff.
expand on that in a minute when it's my turn to talk. Serge, are you done, or because I can? Okay.
If you got data on this or a new topic, run with it. Thank you.
Well, I want to talk about Emily Pike.
Oh, please do.
One of the things that North America, Turtle Island, does is it greatly oppresses Indigenous people. And I live near Winnipeg, Canada, which is considered ground zero for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirits because of our unbelievable per capita incidence of MMIW. So for the past for 2 years, we fought to have the police and the government support a search in the landfills for victims of a serial killer. He confessed to 4 victims. 2 of them are in Prairie Green landfill, and the government of Manitoba, under the Conservative Party, launched a literal political campaign based on keeping the victims of a serial killer in the landfill. Now, that is just letting anybody who's seeing, letting them know where I'm coming from. I've been active in the fight to search the landfill. They were saying things like it's unsafe, which is completely untrue. It would be too expensive, which would not have cost as much had the police actually done their job and found the people, found the evidence to convict. And it only took 82 days to find Morgan Harris in the landfill. It did not take 3 years. And how this relates to Emily is I am watching the way that people are discussing her case. If you don't know who Emily Pike is, she is an Indigenous girl, teenager, who was unalived. And when they found her, she had been dismembered. And the way that people, the media, TikTokers, everybody is talking about her, they are not saying her name. They are talking about an Indigenous girl was found chopped up, and they haven't found their hands. It's brutal. It is absolutely brutal. The dehumanization that is going on. That is a little girl. Miigwech for all of the support. It is absolutely appalling. But this is how the mainstream media speaks about us. This is how white people speak about us. This is how the greater society speaks about us. We are not people first. We are parts. We are not beloved members of families. She was a foster kid, and people are, trying to call out foster care and why are there 30 kids missing from this one foster home, but they are not humanizing the victims. If kids are going missing from a foster home, yes, you absolutely do have to look into that. But you don't do so by dehumanizing the people. You have to dig down. If you want to stop the oppression and solve the problem, you have to dig right down into the root cause. And the root cause is lack of family support. Some people are taken into foster care simply because their family is poor and cannot fulfill the societal prerequisites. Maybe they don't have enough food. Maybe they don't have adequate housing because there's a mold problem or lack of insulation or something to that effect. The kids are taken, they're put into foster care, and the foster families are paid a significant amount of money to take care of these children. Whereas the other option would be to provide those resources to the families so that they can get what they need to then fulfill those requirements and the family can remain intact. That has a direct effect on whether or not kids go missing. It has a direct effect on what kinds of abuse that child will be subjected to. It has a direct effect on trafficking. It has a direct effect on survival. And it starts with those societal issues, but then it is constantly and repeatedly reinforced by how people speak about us. When they were talking about Jeremy Skibicki's victims, 4 victims, they talk about so-and-so was a foster kid, so-and-so had addictions, right? If you have substance use disorder, look into the trauma that is at the basis of that. Solve that problem and provide treatment. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes money, but it's better than having somebody removed from the census. Sorry, I have to code words. And literally thrown in the garbage. And then when we are thrown in the garbage, police, the government, society fights to keep us in the garbage because they don't see us as people. We are parts. Right. We are addicts. We are foster kids. We are somehow deserving of this fate.
Correct.
And when I see people talking about Emily, I talk about Emily. I talk about issues. If I'm talking about things that are done to a person, I don't focus on the name in that. But when I talk about the subject in general, first I say the name. Then I say what happened. Person first. What happened second. And now that she's trending, which is a mixed bag, non-Indigenous business are making bank selling MMIW merchandise.
Yes, they are.
And I own an Indigenous business. You've already mentioned it, so I feel comfortable mentioning that. My Etsy shop is called Pride Dragons Apparel. And I have elected as a Canadian Indigenous-owned business, I continue, despite our trade war, whatever, MMIW doesn't see a border. In fact, a lot of our women from Winnipeg are trafficked to the United States. And as such, I absolutely want to support both the Americans and the Canadians to get locally sourced, Indigenous-owned merchandise. And so my shop is clearly marked with Made in USA or Canadian, so that you don't pay, my prices have not budged. Tariffs or not, my prices are staying the same. It might put me out of business, but I'm still going to.
That's not have you had on a question. Question, sister. Are you connected to anybody in Alaska?
Alaska? No.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So I was just on the phone with the business boutique. Is a black woman who owns a business boutique. She does the Black Business Expo and is networked like there is no tomorrow. So in Alaska, 80 million square miles were ceded back to indigenous people. There are 12 corporations, and they have their own hospital that neither I nor Vix would be able to attend. Only indigenous people can go to that hospital, and they don't charge because they have 12 corporations that are paying for everything. Please inbox me and let's connect you, because you don't have to fight what you're fighting, because there's like $4 billion that has to flow through these 12 corporations from the oil companies.
I think I'm already following you.
Okay, then inbox
Yeah,
me so that we can have
I am already following you.
right. Then inbox me so we can have a real conversation that isn't about you having to try and convince people that you're human, because there's already communities that my come on, my little brother is up in the North Slope too. So I mean, he's working on the North Slope. So let me. I'm a community organizer. I'm a solutions. I don't like hearing the problem over and over again. And I've been hearing what you've been saying for the last 50 years. So I believe you. I understand it. And we are not going to be able to convince psychopaths that we have value.
That's right.
That's what you're running into. You just made a very coherent argument. That is not the issue. You can say it right all day long. If they don't want to hear you, they don't want to hear you. Period. You can make the best presentation on the planet. If they don't want to hear you, they don't want to hear you. So let's get you in front of people that actually want to hear you. What's up, Bryce? All right.
All right.
This is TikTok live.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we can connect for sure.
Word. Okay. Word.
Thank you, Star.
So I guess as a transition or a segue to those who are paying attention to what Star just said, how does it make you feel to know that it isn't Star? Star is not the problem. The problem is the people who can make the decisions are Elon Musk like, in that they don't want to solve the problem. Period.
Yeah,
The
facts.
the comment here: white people have been bred through eugenics to not hear nor see us. I think it's the emotional charge of having the conversation is painful to our European American friends and family. They buckle down in that they know they're not feeling anything, and it hurts to know you're not feeling anything. That's what I hear.
So as far as listening to Star, it is sad and it makes me angry and depressed to know that people that look like me don't care.
Mhm.
And I know they don't care, not even just from her story, even though I believe her story. I know because of how they treat each other. You know, we treat each other this way too. We dehumanize each other on a regular basis.
Mhm.
And
You
once
guys,
you dehumanize each other,
you
what's
guys
that,
are
Star?
socialized for every man for themselves, and meanwhile, I know Black and Indigenous communities are communities. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just our standard way of being. That's, there's not the same toxic independence. And that's definitely a contributing factor to the absolute apathy or even hostility. Is you're socialized wrong, plain and simple.
Right. Facts.
And a lot of us can't see it because it's from the outside looking in, we see a lot of similar like dysfunctionality and family dysfunctionality, and we think we're living the same experience. We think we're having the same family dysfunctions that people of color are, and black people are, and indigenous peoples are, and we're not. We are not.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, as individuals, you do certainly face challenges, but it's not the same kind of systemic and purposeful issues that people of the global majority experience. That's by design, you
Well,
know.
okay. Forgive me, sister. Yes, your statement is factual, and they are the cause. They are the system. And at
yes,
some level, they know that. It is their fear that is holding back everything. It is their discomfort that is holding back everything. It's their lack of understanding that is.
We're losing you.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to find the internet where I'm at. Okay. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you. All right. So let's see. Yes to the individuality, and I don't want to get trapped by the individuality. Okay. When you are the oppressor, your pain hurts everybody else. And so then we have to constantly talk about every problem in terms that you can understand, even though you're the cause of the problem. So it becomes a mind fuck in that we're not having the same experience because you can change the meaning of a word to meet your comfort level. They're constantly saying, say it in a way that I can understand, but you're a part of the oppressor class. You're the one causing the problem. How can I talk about the problem in a way that you can understand when you, at the end of the day, don't want to feel like you're the one causing the problem?
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes the mind fuck, and you're seeing it right now on your video,
Mm.
Vix, where
Yeah.
they're crashing against the idea of being called European Americans, okay,
Yeah.
and not having the control of forcing us through white racial violence to call that. No, I'm just an American. How can you? How are you taking my agency away from me? And if we say, I'm going to call you what is pertinent to what's really going on and not cater to your feelings, then they say, you're oppressing me. You're taking away my individuality, as if those of us who are oppressed can do that.
Right.
But in their world, because another white person can hurt them, individual to individual, they sincerely believe, well, you can shoot me. Yeah, but you're everybody will just, I'll get, that's not real. You know it's not real. It's not
Yeah.
viable. So that's what they literally have to sit there and do the mental gymnastics. And if we don't go along with the mental gymnastics, then they sincerely believe that they are justified in being violent economically or physically towards us because I gotta stop you from causing me the psychological pain.
Mm-hmm.
So we're stuck at the present moment where it takes courage for white people to do what you're doing right now, Vix, to do what you're doing right now, Robert, to do what you're doing right now, Bjorn, which is even talk about reality.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And like, we lose it over the smallest little thing. And then we turn it around like everybody else is hurting us by hurting our feelings, which
And we are hurting their feelings. It
yes,
is
we are.
legit pain that they're feeling. Legitimate pain.
It is.
So getting them to respond is where we're at right now when it comes down to our current movement. Getting European Americans to even pay attention And they're doing everything within their power to block this out, block that out. I don't watch the news. I don't want to have this conversation. Please respect my boundaries. I don't know what to do. You want me to hurt myself and just feel bad about myself. Okay, I can't do this. Could you just please leave me alone? Okay, you know what? I need to call 911 to get you away from me because you're harassing me right now. And they become the oppressor right then and there.
Look, Marcus is demonstrating this point for us right now.
Correct. And the fact that he can't get his arguments to have traction under 49 days under a open white supremacy is what's generating the pain for him. That we don't have to accept his argument. So now we're the problem, and he's going to go. And this is the beautiful argument that makes it. You know what? You guys are making me racist.
Because you keep talking about it.
No, they'll say because you won't accept my argument. You won't accept I'm innocent. You're making me. I gotta go now deal with the white supremacists because I don't want to be hurt by you.
Yeah, Marcus is losing it.
Correct.
About to have
And
a
let him
full-blown
stay.
crash out.
Unless he becomes belligerent, let him stay because what can he do? He's in that much
He
pain.
can't hurt me.
And he doesn't feel like
Yeah.
he has any power.
No.
He doesn't believe he has any power.
Yeah.
My
And he's
wife
doing
is-
exactly what he's saying that we're doing because he's coming in trying to force us to accept his arguments. We're not in his space trying to accept his or make him accept our arguments. We're talking about what we know the problem to be. And he can accept it or not, but he's losing it.
Mhm. And you're right. And he acted like an invader, and he's invading our space.
Yep. Colonizing.
Which you'll justify saying, you're having it on a public platform. Why can't I be here? Right. And we go, like, you're right. You're right. You guys don't, you know what? Block me. Huh? You guys block me.
Mm-hmm.
But Jordan, go ahead.
My wife is a childcare professional, and it reminds me a lot of the 2-year-olds that she takes care of. A lot of we talk a lot about what's age appropriate and the way that the hyper individuality and the lack of accountability is super age appropriate for 2-year-olds, but it's like we never grow out of that as white people. Like we're stuck in this, and it reminds me how we don't have like those rite of passages that traditional cultures have, where you go through a semi like traumatic experience in order to get you aligned with reality, to learn empathy, to get everybody on the same page with terms and such. And I feel like our lack of that kind of social ritual of growing up is a lot of the problem of why we can't see people as humans, because we're stuck in this childhood age where people like lash out like and have tantrums like 2-year-olds do.
Yeah.
You do have those rituals. You just don't like them.
Yeah. And I have a question for you, Bjorn, about that. Honestly, what are your thoughts on that relationship is in the fact that we also romanticize those rites of passage that we did at one time practice, or that, like Kokai says, we have and don't like, or that we can't practice because they were racist. Our
Okay,
rites of passage were.
and just for clarity, frat parties are rites of passages.
Mhm.
Okay, let's get real. Okay, you are when
Harmful.
Justin Trudeau and every political leader has a picture of them in college in blackface. You do have rites of passages. You don't like them.
That's true. Yeah,
Our
I
rites of
mean,
passages are acts of oppression.
yeah, they were traumatic. Like frat parties are traumatic rituals that pushes people further into white supremacy. Like absolutely, That's the rites of passage for, and it's the college has always been kind of a elite place. So the people of um, power get to grow up into like white supremacists and make decisions for everybody else in that way.
But then we romanticize that in our literature, in our media, and we romanticize other cultures' rites of passage. And sometimes, I think everybody in this panel here probably at least understands that romanticize doesn't necessarily mean we portray it good, as goodly and sweet. It doesn't mean that it's not. It can go. It's a full spectrum, right? So we romanticize sometimes in a very uh, admirational way the rites of passage of other cultures, sometimes in a very dismissive or barbaric instance way. And we do that to the frat culture and everything too. So I was kind of wondering, like, since you have been educating yourself more on your Nordic roots rites of passage,
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on how the romanticizing of it ties into the white supremacy called structure, the actual structure of power that makes white supremacy culture?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the romanticization of it is a commodification of it, like trying to reduce it down into easily to digest, like narratives and bite-sized things for people to not have to leave their comfort in order to like ingest it, right? So I feel like the nuance, the long conversations that are required for a lot of those things. I mean, that's how you stop the commodification of it. Is you have to stop romanticizing it. You got to have the tough conversations, the uncomfortable conversations around these things. And I think we're completely unpracticed in that. I think because I think white culture is a lot. It is designed to make commodities out of everything. Um,
I
and
agree.
yeah.
I said it
Wow.
on, I think, yesterday's live. I'll repeat it again that uh, capitalism in itself, which is, the economic model of white supremacy, is it requires the output that it produces to be worth more than the sum of the value of all the inputs. And physics tells us that that's not possible. And so the only way to do that is to devalue some of the inputs. And I know how we do that in the real world, how that system translates to the world is we devalue people.
I think a lot of times I have this feeling of almost hopelessness that white people don't have what it takes to actually save ourselves, to find our humanity before uh, we destroy the climate and before we like hurt all the people, the other humans in the world that we actually like need to coexist with. It's hard because it's like these systems are in place, and I think we try as we can to have these conversations and stuff. And I guess it's this like white supremacy in me creates this sense of urgency and hoping that we can see more progress because we're in like a Trump presidency and stuff. But I guess things have to happen in the time that they will happen. You got to have the nuanced conversations are going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time to pick apart and to decommodify things.
Pardon stuff. I'm sorry. Jordan, one, your despair is valid because, Jordan, it's only going to be a small. I have never read or heard a prophecy where more than half of European Americans wipe each other out. Because you're correct. They can't do what it is that we're asking them to do. That's why they're desperate right now and why they voted for Trump, because they're absolutely desperate. I need you to just respect me. What you're just saying about trying to dumb down what you've learned about Nordic culture in terms that they can understand, but the terms that they can understand is white supremacy. They can't do what we're asking them to do. Black joy hurts them because of epigenetics. We're not going to be able to get over epigenetics, which means we're preparing for the unalivings to happen. They're going to self unalive because there isn't any space for them. We don't want to practice white supremacy anymore. Okay, so it is going to be depressing
Yeah.
that they feel so much pain that they can't share with black, brown, and indigenous persons. That's something that's hard to accept.
And it's happening. I personally know 3 people since the Trump won in November that have unalived themselves because they can't hold on to the weight of the reality of the situation.
You said they have unalived themselves?
Yeah, they already have.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
I'm so sorry.
yep, yep. And that's going to increase. I mean, I expect over the next 18 months to increase dramatically because there isn't a way out. They feel abandoned and rejected by the black community, just like Marcus. Their arguments are being rejected. They can't rally and parade their way to peace because those aren't protests. Those are rallies and parades.
Yep.
Yep.
There's no demand. And it really comes down to right now what Congress is begging Elon Musk to not do cuts and everything when they're the ones with the power. Like, why are you even paying attention to anything Elon is saying? Why is he allowed in the room? Yes, they need to start now being physical towards him. And they don't want to do that because they're terrified of CW number 3. And I'm saying that so as to not get the algorithm to, because we're already censored. As much as people say that we're in the land of the free, we have to censor ourselves in order to be able to have a conversation. No different than China, no different than Iran, no different than Saudi Arabia. We're
Yeah.
in that space, and it's because European Americans are so fragile right now. They're walking around terrified of each other. As the sister just said, I am the 92%, and I live in Minnesota. They are really stressed out. Yes, white people are really stressed out.
Um, Auntie says white people unaliving themselves isn't sad. The reason I find it sad is, one, it's my community, but two, a lot of times when we take ourselves out, we don't go alone. I mean,
Right.
that's how the mass poo-poos happen.
Correct. Correct. Their pain has to be everybody's pain.
Yeah.
Right?
They're too. They can't do it themselves, so they want to do something so terrible that somebody else will do it for them. That's a lot of what
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. And then, like, in my specific town, what was it I showed you? It's up by 86%. It's 86% higher than the entire state of unalivings. It's
Right.
primed and ready for one of these mass things to happen. Honestly.
Correct.
There was a young-ish, approaching middle-aged man in my community. I never knew him. He was younger than my generation. Just a few months ago, that I remember seeing a news article about them running the police on a chase and getting out in the field and drawing a gun on them and everything. And of course, he lived through it. But of course, when people put it on Facebook, people said the obvious thing, but in the very unkind ways, that he was trying to unalive himself by a cop. And
Yes.
that, I believe that was true, but we got to be sensitive about how we talk about people like that, because it's, that's a double problem right there.
Hi, Auntie. Did you want to say something?
Hello. I wanted to just clarify what I said, because I know the history of unaliving, death, things like that is really troubling. And I think that's part of us letting go of patriarchy, as well as all of the Abrahamic religions have this like real big stick up their bum holes about unaliving and people's autonomy and rights to their own bodies, energy, and what happens, right? So I, through a lot of research, came across like all of this information about Black women during slavery taking themselves out,
Correct.
particularly when they stopped importing us from Africa and forced us into breeding camps, all that kind of stuff, right? And so I like went down this whole thing and I'm like, why is this such a taboo when every time I turn around and I'm looking at, I'm Gullah Geechee and also from the Booby tribe, which is from an island off the coast of Cameroon and Nigeria. And so I'm like looking at the history of like people here, people there, and then I went down this whole like Taino. I live in Florida, so like every other person's like, "Oh, I'm Taino, I'm Taino." I'm like, actually, you're Black. I'm like, Puerto Ricans, y'all, your ancestry is like 90% Black. Dominicans, of course, y'all is Black. You share an island with Haitians. Like, be quiet. But like, why do I keep seeing the same pattern all throughout like the Americas and all throughout colonization of like people taking themselves out? And I think that a lot of it has to do with two folds of like, one, we were not of Abrahamic religions, so there was no stigma around you ending your life because you are a part of the earth, you are a part of the great all. So what is it to stop your life now? You're just going to be reincarnated into it. The other side is like the Tainos specifically took oh my gosh, my brain is blanking on it. Is it cassava? No. It's a root. We eat it. It's either cassava or the other one. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name. But anyways, it has cyanide in it. And so they purposefully, they saw these Spanish conquistadors coming onto their land. And the Taino Empire was like from South America all the way up through Florida. Like it was huge. Like these are millions and millions of people who decided that they were like, yeah, no, we're not doing this. Like, we are absolutely not going to do this. We are taking ourselves out. Again, like with Black women during slavery, we were like, yeah, y'all can be about this whole slavery stuff. I'm either running away or, because again, we're not from the Abrahamic religions, I am going to go be with my ancestors because this life is not where it's at. So when I hear things like 50,000 people last year, unalive themselves. Oh my God, these people like unalive themselves because of the 1920s stock market crash or the Trump or the this or the that. I'm like, yeah, but the amount of people that like YT supremacists have forced to make that choice far exceeds anybody who we've lost in the last decade or the last 100 years. Like, the YT men jumping off the buildings in the 20s during the what was the last recession we had? The 2008 recession. There were all these stories of like YT people being like, we don't have any money and we can't do this. And so, oh my God, I mean, I lived in Florida. I remember hearing so many men. There's like a ton of engineers here. So many of them just like taking themselves out because they just couldn't imagine not having the power and privilege that they had. And so like, honestly, who cares? Like, that's a really hard position to be at. But like, look, if that is the reparation that you need to give to this earth, then give it. I know, real hard. But like, if you are not going to do the work, then please leave. That's how I feel about it. If you're not going to do the work, you aren't going to heal, you aren't going to grieve, you aren't going to reach out to anybody, please leave the planet. Please go. Because the last thing we need is more YT people just sitting around and doing absolutely nothing, and in their nothingness, they are still being violent, while other people are actually like being completely unalive because of the systems that YT people created. Like, the insurance system, which insurance comes directly out of slavery. Like, whenever I hear YT people being like, I don't want you to talk about slavery anymore. Can we move on? I'm like, okay, are we going to get rid of insurance companies then?
No.
because if we keep insurance companies, we are keeping the slave institution going. So it's like, I know, really hard pill to swallow, but like, the y'all have created systems that have unalived more people than just one random YT person taking themselves off the planet.
Oh,
That's
for
what I
sure.
wanted to say.
Auntie, you can
Absolutely.
stay. One, everything you said was right and exact. Two, every prophecy, the minimum is 60%. The population has to drop to 60%. The only reason that suicide, or I'm sorry, the lie. The only reason why unaliving is frowned upon is because the population of YT people on the planet Earth is so low. That's the only reason, which is the reason why we have racism in the first place. There's a reason why
Yeah.
they say the population is too
Capitalism as
great.
well as the Abrahamic religions, they need our energy. They need our energy. They need that 10% tithe. They need women and people bringing their babies to the church. They need people for their wars. I don't know if we can say
Correct.
wars or schmores or schmares. They need us. They need the bodies. And that's part of, like, again, I've been doing this research and I'm like trying to really track it. I'm like, when did people started saying that this activity, this form of bodily autonomy was a mortal sin and should be, frowned upon? Like, when did the Catholic Church start saying, like, you will not get into heaven and you'll be in purgatory forever if you do this? Like, when
1300s.
exactly? So far, I feel I've seen it kind of pop up around the same time when the Vatican was like, yeah, bitch, go out there and do that slave-free shit. We totally
Right.
support it. And we
Right.
don't think that it's a mortal sin anymore. It's totally not a
Right.
mortal sin anymore.
Right.
Like, I think that was the time when they started changing the doctrine to change people to get caught up in thinking that, like, this is your only lifetime. And that's also like a whole other thing of like, how come the Abrahamic religions don't have reincarnation? And I'm like, well, if you're trying to get everybody to hyper focus on putting in all of their maximum energy, you have to have a baby this lifetime because you're not coming back. You have to get married because you're not coming back. You have to do this. You have to be perfect. You have to have a house. You have to do this. Like, if you make it so that if you are not coming back to this earth, then it keeps people into fear, anxiety, hustle culture, instead of a culture where it's like I'm like, I already know I had a Dallas lifetime. Like, I already know this is not my first time to this bitch. And it honestly has freed me. It's like really, really been very freeing to think about time not tied to YT supremacy anymore. But then at the same time, I have to be a black femme in Florida and like think about time and space and like all those different dimensions and stuff. But like, yeah, there's a lot of things that we have to decolonize. I mean, that's what this conversation is about. It's like, how do YT people decolonize? But then how do all of us on this journey decolonize? And part of it is like letting go of religion, letting go of time and things like that.
They can't. That's where part of the
deconstruct.
problem is.
Yeah.
Yes. They can
have to
deconstruct
deconstruct
and then create something new, but they can't decolonize. The colonizer can't decolonize. That's back to Black Panther Party. Racism can't fight racism. Sexism can't fight sexism. Misogyny can't fight misogyny. You gotta do something totally different. So they can deconstruct their culture and then create a life affirming culture, but they can't decolonize from what they already are. That's where they run into when they hear us say, and I've learned this from Rob, dismantle white supremacy sounds like get rid of cell phones, get rid of electricity, get rid of running water, get rid of the technology that they're utilizing in order to rule everything. They don't know how, right now, they need a garden because white supremacy is the grocery store. It is Walmart. That is white supremacy. So get rid of it. They say, how am I going to eat? What kind of house am I going to have? What kind of transportation? How do you want me to live? You don't want me to live. Now I got to kill you, which is their ancestors flowing through. Violence is the only solution that they can come up with in order to maintain what's going on. Okay? So I'm in agreement with you. You're right. the first person that came to my mind was Austin Woolfolk, who was a famous slave trader in Baltimore. Because my brother lives in the DMV area, you can still go to his darn office, which had a holding cell, and all the black women who unalived their children and themselves rather than get trucked from Virginia and Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay to New Orleans, where they would be a fancy girl. You know, so Anthro, what's your name?
I'm Al.
Al. Okay, what you got?
Yeah, I just don't think it should be on anyone who's not white to grieve white people who have killed themselves, unless they had relationships, and that's something different. But I just feel like you can't. There's already so much going on. Is that's our responsibility, and that's why we're here.
I wanted to wait my turn to express that, but I did want to clarify for my own stance for Auntie. I would not expect you to,
No.
you know,
No.
we were exploring, me and Vix were speaking about our experience only, and people of color should not be expected to live our experience with it.
Or to grieve. Especially not to grieve. I mean, like, you can't stop yourself if you care or have, like, what feelings come up. That's, your own experience, but, yeah.
She did. She ate. That was wonderful. I followed within the first few minutes, and I'm gonna make sure I contribute for that education. Thank you.
Yeah. Comment. They have no destination. Without white supremacy, they have no history, no homeland, no tradition, no nothing. Oh my God. First off,
and that's like one of the biggest white supremacist lies. That's like literally one of the biggest white supremacist lies, that white people fall for their own okie doke. Like falling for your own okie doke. I'm like, white tea people, you, before y'all let yourselves be colonized, before they like strung up all the women, they went through, ate all the women that were loud, they, unalived all the men who stood up, before they did all of the violence, because all of the violence. And that's something that like I've had to really just like sit with. I'm just like, wait, so it's like that ACAB meme that's like, all cops are bastards? All cops? Like, I'm like, so everything that white tea people have done on this planet, they did to themselves. And it's like, everything that white tea people have done on this planet, they did to themselves. I'm like, everything? Like, yes, everything they did, they've done to themselves. And it's like, y'all fall for the same okie doke. I'm like, before y'all were patriarchal, you were goddess worshippers. We have the evidence. We see the buildings with the coochies as the opening of the door before you can go into the temple. We see how blood as sacred menstrual blood type things. Y'all had different languages. Y'all did not all speak English. English is a part of y'all becoming colonized. Like, you all did not worship the same religion. You didn't eat the same foods. Some people were on this calendar. Some people were on that calendar. I mean, and actually I found this out by, I'm dyslexic, and so like I can't stand English. But I also am always like having to study English because it's like my brain just will not hold on to grammar. So I'm constantly looking up like, why is this spelled this way? Why is it that way? And just realizing like English is the way it is because of violence and colonization and the becoming of white tea people before they were white tea, just using violence to oppress each other. And that's why we have like 4 theirs. That's why we have fair, and fair. Because at one point, this group of white tea people said fair this way. And then they ate the other group of white tea people that said fair that way. And then the other group ate the other white people. But nobody went back and like deleted any of the fairs. So it's like... but that is something that like it annoys me so much when I hear that. And I'm just like, white tea people need to stop spreading their own misinformation. That is not true. But because y'all don't understand that you do have culture, then you become culture vultures. You become cultural vampires. And now suddenly you're sitting here with dreadlocks telling me that you know more about dreadlocks because that one time you know in Jamaica with some Rasta man up in the mountains. Like, wait.
What?
Your people were nappy and not washing your bum holes way before y'all met Jamaicans. Don't blame that on Jamaicans, okay? Like,
Right.
you had your
And if they
own culture
understood
of being
Rastafari,
nappy.
they
You
wouldn't
had
be
your
it.
own culture of this. Like,
And if they
miss
understood
me with
Rastafari, they
that.
wouldn't wear
But
dreads.
that is such a huge white supremacist lie.
Can you, sorry, just in the break in the
Teach.
conversation, can you
And
make
if they
sure to,
understood Rastafari, they wouldn't wear dreads.
can you drop your Cash App or like one of your things, Auntie? I can't tell if your name is Auntie Fem or because it has dots. Auntie Feminist. I can click on it, can I?
Yeah, we owe you a micro tuition for this session.
Sorry, it's Auntie Feminist Killjoy is my
Okay.
TikTok name, but my Cash App is Constance Create. Constance is my real first name, and then I can put my
Oh, that's
Venmo.
pretty.
Okay. So, how do white people contribute to their own oppression? So far, we have on the table. They engage in their own misinformation and believe their own lies. They run from their feelings. They try and talk in terms that each other can understand, which means that their right to comfort is constantly reinforced. They deny the rites of passages that they engage in, which help them reinforce white supremacy. What else?
I said this earlier in the chat, but I think that white people is part of like how do they contribute to their own oppression, owning land and property here in America and also basically globally. Like this is
Lord have mercy.
I think they're like waiting on the government to do and give reparations, and that's never gonna happen. And like the owning of land is still, how do I explain this? It's like I saw this spiritually and it's hard for me to explain it. But like the owning of property energetically ties you to this system, this particular oppressive system. And so like property as well as generational wealth because it's energy. So of course you're going to want to stay and keep the system that's giving you energy. And so it's like you have to disconnect, like very much like a vampire or like a parasite. You have to take yourself off of the thing that you have been surviving on, which is land. Like I'm like, I need every single YT person who lives in the Americas, who owns a house and or property, to give it to a black person immediately. Not when you're dying, not as like we'll rent it to you for free for 99 years for your, give me the deed. I need deeds in hands now because y'all holding on to property is contributing to the oppression, and it contributes to your own oppression because y'all know it's a lie. You know you don't own this house. You know you don't own that land. Like it's part of the psychosis. I'm like we need, and the government is not going to give reparations. Like I feel like that's something that a lot of like Democratic and left leaning white people are just, they don't want to talk about that at all. They're just like, oh, well, you know, we're totally going to get you reparations one day. And it's like, no, the day is today. Like if you're a white person, you see a black person, give that black person $20. And it doesn't matter whether that's your last $20 as a white person because you have privilege. And you need to understand how your privilege is going to mean that that $20 has already turned into $100 in your pocket because of your proximity, or if you're light skinned, if you're like biracial, whatever, their proximity to whiteness. And then also just like YT people, like y'all got to just give the money back, and that will actually relieve a lot of the cognitive dissonance. Because it's like, how you gonna be revolutionary talking about, oh, we want to support black people, and then looking at your bank account and you got enough money for several families. You got enough house and cars and all this stuff for so many people. So did you really actually do something? Did you really actually
So,
do anything?
so the question then becomes, how does what Auntie just said make you feel? Because this is eager, and I definitely, because we did the first two, I got to work on not falling into the trap of European Americans feeding and lynching off of black women. So I'm glad that they're sending them some money. And then how does what they just said, that truth Auntie just dropped, how does it make you feel?
I think scared of what it means for the future. Of like, how do you. I think specifically because I'm 21. And so I'm at this age where I'm graduating college and I'm like, oh, I'm not. I don't have the excuse of being a college age kid anymore, and not that I ever did. You know what I mean? Um, but a little of like, well, then how do I plan for the future? Because there's this, the societal norm of like, okay, and this is the steps you take now. And just the having to learn of like, okay, well, I can't do that because it's unethical and I don't want to do that and I don't want to participate. Then what do I do? You have like, how do we community plan together after that?
Right? How do you community plan in a way that doesn't reinforce the oppression,
Yeah.
create the
Right.
oppressive outcomes? So now somebody they're going off, they're saying freeloader and everything else like that. You do know that all of the statements and everything, the reactions that you're giving right now are from the oppressor class.
And proof of what we're talking about. Like you're
Yeah.
just
Correct.
proving your point.
And I think that's the mind fuck that our European American friends and family are dealing with right now. We are 49 days into this Trump administration. Auntie, what they just said is correct.
Mm-hmm.
You got to divest. I mean, there was this guy, even if you used Abrahamic religions, his name was Yeshua. He said the exact same thing, that you have to divest from Rome. You can't keep taking from Rome and believing that by giving to Israelis, ancient Israelis, you're doing good. They say work for your own
Oh,
stuff. No, that's the problem. We got to move away from private property. you're,
yeah.
you're proving the
The
point. We
the
don't
owning
want to
stuff
do
is the
that.
problem.
I have
Auntie is correct.
I have a thought on this myself. And some feedback. Because Auntie's talking to me. I'm a homeowner, I'm a property owner. And I have to acknowledge that by that great tie into the beginning of the live where we were talking about how do we contribute. I have to acknowledge that by simply continuing to possess this, I am allowing myself my own comfort. I am living in my YT comfort, and I am contributing to the oppression. And I only have excuses. For me, they're legitimate. They're legitimate reasons. And, like, how can my family live? How can I support the family that I have if I don't have, a home to live in? But there are other solutions. That conversation gets long. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. Just talking about the feeling, the perception here is we feel like, I can't right now, I can't do that because I don't know how we would live or survive. But I have to acknowledge that at the same time, that is what's happening. That's what it's doing. It's similar to me saying at the beginning of the live that every time I go to work and get a paycheck and my taxes go, to the federal government, I'm contributing. I have to acknowledge that I'm doing that and be able to live with that, and at the same time work on building a way to not do that. That's the only way that I can live with myself, is to be building the path to where I can do what Auntie asked me to do, or told me I needed.
Auntie, I have a question. Because I grew up in Alyeska, listening to Native elders talk about how they were contributing to their own oppression by using U.S. dollars. How do you feel about U.S. dollars?
Yeah. My anarchist friend and I were talking about that. Like, is it anarchist to run up a bunch of credit card debt and knowing that you were going to file bankruptcy and or never pay this back? Like, is that hardcore, or are you paying into the system? You know, like, well, I think that we have to get rid of it. Like, I was never pro Harriet Tubman going on the 20. I was just like, y'all haven't read her story? Minty was not about that. She was actively trying to burn this place down. So I don't know why she herself would ever want to be on the 20. Nothing that comes out of this system can be kept. And that is honestly, it's even with us getting land back and property, we still have to continue to decolonize. So it's not about just me. Like right now I'm unhoused. I'm working on a bus, but I'm living in the car with my dogs. And so it's not, and part of that's because we can't find housing. Because there's all a bunch of white people on all the land. And they want rent and they want this and they want that for you to get some piece of land. But anyways, but even if I had home and all this land and stuff, eventually we have to move out of a patriarchal hierarchical system where it really is it's restorative justice. It's all of it. It's like getting rid of the ideas of property taxes, borders, boundaries, but then also like we have to restore the land. That's a huge part of it. So like this whole country used to be a food forest with like walking highways. Like we have to go slowly but surely go back. It is never, I mean, this is like part of the indigenous, knowledge always talks about 7 generations. But it's like, yeah, no, this is a 7-generation plan. We're going to need at least 200 and something years. Plus, we have to, I don't like saying the word breed, but English is, so my issue with English is that because it is a colonizer language, it's really hard to talk about these things. And I think that that's also something that people don't realize. Like part of the reason why we have a hard time talking about how to decolonize is that we are speaking a language that was written by colonizers to make sure that we couldn't decolonize with their language, because you can't use the master's tool to break down the master's house. So that's also part of it. Like we have to create our own language. Like we have to actually create everything. We need an old and or new economic system. Like I'm totally willing to look to the past, do some Sankofa, see what we left in the back, bring it up front, but also maybe just create something new. I think the internet has a lot of potential for all of this. Like we could actively and are creating our own internet language. They just keep suppressing it. But if you really think about like internet slang and things, like we are creating our own language. Anyways, yeah, so land back is not just about the people that have the land, but also those that will be given land. We have to decolonize. Like it's not okay for like my fear is that okay, all the white people ate themselves and now it's just a bunch of Negroes. And now suddenly I'm washing a bunch of black man's socks and underwear and I have no rights, anything. And I'm just like, wait a second. Like that's my fear, is that we will drag patriarchy into this, because that like part of what happened with the Black Panthers is like, yes, the FBI, the CIA, all of them came in, but also the Panthers themselves had a lot of black male patriarchy that they brought in, and then they started essaying women. They started telling women to be quiet. I mean, the first president of the Black Panther Party was a woman, and then the party like shifted and did all this other things. But if you really look at, and that's part of just like letting go of patriarchy and moving into matrilineal type of energy and spirituality, letting go of religion that's patriarchal, because otherwise I will be somebody's sister wife with my hair wrapped up in a long skirt in Jamaica again, eating bananas, but now I have no rights. I'm just like, well, we got rid of the white tea people, but now I'm being enslaved by a bunch of black men. Like that's not so like this. I know the conversation is about, and when like you and I are having an inter-community conversation, which we should be having offline, but that's part of all of it. It's like we need white people to wake up and or go away. I'm okay with both. Either go to Mars or go into the bottom of the ocean, do something, but staying in the middle, being mediocre is not the solution. That's not going to does nothing for any of us. And I live in Orlando, and like there's so many whitey people who are like proud centrists, and I'm just like, I don't understand. So you do nothing. You're not on the left or the right. You're just sitting in the middle, just taking up space. Yeah, but like, so we have, it's about everybody moving forward towards decolonization. That's really what I'm trying to say.
So
Yeah, being in the
how
middle.
does that make you feel? What they just said, what Auntie just said, how does that make you feel?
I think everything that she said is absolutely 100% correct. It is painful. It is confusing and scary, but it's actual facts. And unless we're willing to face that head on as a community and do the work that's necessary, we're going to continue to feel those feelings.
Yeah, I just coincidentally just completed module 7 of Matthew Reynolds' prep front-loading work for the workshop this week, and it was over a large portion of it was over internalized racism within the Black community. And what Auntie was saying there, kind of clicked in that together with that for me, in that it is possible for white supremacy culture to continue when there are no white people left on the planet. If
Facts.
we don't do this right, if we don't create something else.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why I use the term bred and eugenics or eugenics. I don't know if I can say that on TikTok, because like epigenetics is real. Like we talk a lot about like, oh, Black folks have trauma from, post-traumatic slave syndrome. And I'm like, what about post-traumatic owning slave ass syndrome? How about that? What about all the white women that enslaved Black women? What about that? What about them who bred us like animals? What about that? Like, that has actually changed y'all's DNA. Yes. That's why you cannot love and light your way out of being a racist.
Right.
You cannot just like, you can't just, lay up with a bunch of Black folks, have a bunch of biracial babies, and think, I have solved racism. Correct. A white woman offered me $10,000 to have a baby for her with her son because they are part of James Madison, the 5th president of the United States, is their ancestor, and they have inbreded so much because, one of the pillars of white supremacy is writing all your shit down culture, the upholding of the written word. So he pulls out all of her family documents and is like, see how many times we have done the incest, and now our family tree is a reef, and I really like your energy, and you're super cute, and my son really likes you, and so how about you have a baby with us, because we really need better genes, because again, with the whole everybody intermingling with everybody else. And she's like, also side note, we have schizophrenia and this thing and this other thing, and all this stuff is just because we don't have any new genes in our gene pool, and I would really, really like to have your genes in our gene pool. Now, she didn't realize that the spice that she saw was autism and dyslexia. But also, he's not wrong, though. I had to sit and really think about this. This happened 10 years ago. And I was like, what was that? She offered me to build a place on the back of their house. This white woman had the whole thing. She was like, you're going to get pregnant by my son. And then you and I are going to raise the baby, and you're going to live here. And she had this whole, and I was like, that's because your ancestor is the 5th president of the United States, James Madison. And after that experience, she is not the only white woman who has asked me for eggs and reproductive material. I guess that's eggs, and access to my uterus, because I'm just like, yeah, y'all are the daughters of slave owners. I mean, y'all are slave owners. Not the daughters of, but like this is what you did. So like it's really, really important that we think about this on a scientific level. Like we have to hit it from everywhere. You got to hit it spiritually, religious, emotionally, mentally, but also genetically. Like incest was a part of YT people colonizing themselves. It's a part of the trauma. Like I honestly, I don't know why these conversations ain't about like how the F do white women trust white men. That's the question I want to know, because after reading They Were Her Property and looking at books like White Trash and Delectable Negro and all these other things about like how YT women have been pimped, truly pimped by their own men. I'm like, how do y'all trust them? I mean, like I've had white male partners in the past and they all treated me like garbage, but but I got out because I was just like, yeah, no, I'm not about this life. And they were very confused as to why I got out, and they were just like, well, all the other white girls took it. And I was just like, yeah, see, that's on them. See, I got the epigenetics that was the slaves running at night epigenetics. I don't have the white woman in the big house staying with the master man, sleeping in bed with him, knowing that he's out there doing everything left, right, and center with all of these black women, and then being angry at the black women for seducing their men. Like, I truly, that's my question to white people. How do white women trust white men? Because they have been diabolical for like 6,000 years.
Dissociation.
Bullshit. No, bullshit.
No.
Yeah, casual killing act.
Speak on it.
The casual killing act. Why? Oh my God.
Casual.
Her name was Elizabeth.
Casual unaliving acts.
Yes, her name was Elizabeth. She chartered Jamestown. That's why they named it Virginia. Her name was Isabella. She chartered Christopher Columbus. She directed Ferdinand to get rid of all the Moors in Spain. We have the history. When they start talking about we were the witches and they oppressed us. No, your grandmother oppressed you. Your great-grandma oppressed you. You didn't want to act right. So they got rid of your ass. Games of Thrones had that crazy-ass white woman in Games of Thrones. That was normal. The king didn't have any real power. Can we stop playing with this? Y'all need to stop.
Game of Thrones is one of the best examples of YT supremacy on TV, hands down. I'm like, if you watch a show, you understand YT supremacy, baby, we can't help you. Because that show it spilled all the tea. It spilled every single tea. I was like, they didn't leave. You mean we got war, violence, grape. Like,
if we don't,
it spilled the tea.
Helen of Troy.
If we don't raise our own oppressors, we won't have access to power.
That part. Helen of Troy. The Ptolemies. The Cleopatra that we're talking about. Yes, Elizabeth Taylor was an accurate depiction. She was not the Cleopatras of Kemet or Ethiopia. She was of the Ptolemy tribe. She was a part of the Greeks. That Cleopatra that persuaded Mark Antony and Julius Caesar looked like Mark Antony and Julius Caesar. Okay? So this is where we're getting into the real ditty. I got to use the bathroom real quick, but we're getting into the real ditty where when it comes down to the oppression, who is really running things? All tool making in Europe was driven by white women. I am so sorry. St. Pauli's girl, there was a time, what witches? There was a time when only women made beer. Why are women making beer in Europe? They're making beer to keep their men from traveling. You know what? If we stay right here, I can make this beer year round. I'm not going to make beer and travel at the same time. I have to have a town. I have to have a house. I have to have agriculture. I have to have this. If you grow this grain, I'll make this beer. I'm sorry.
I'll take that deal.
What's up, Seductive Tease?
So, out of curiosity, going off that, from a historic point of view, would you say that the removal of women from this power came from the church taking over a lot of things, such as making alcohol and the farming agriculture and things of that nature? Just out of curiosity, because that definitely plays into that YT supremacy for sure.
Can we talk about how women do have power? White women specifically? They literally have all the power. And they forfeit the power to white men so that white men can subjugate everyone else and have a scapegoat. I mean, I don't know. I keep hearing us talk about how we don't have power, and it's just not accurate. We do. We have the power to influence the men in our lives. We have the power to say no to the men in our lives. Might it bring us violence against us? Maybe, but they're bringing violence to everyone else. So when are we going to be willing to turn that violence back on ourselves and say, well, enough is enough? We're not powerless. We're more powerful. Our men have to be violent because they don't have power. They need the violence.
Yeah, anthropologist, could you speak more on the I guess like cognitive dissonance? You were just like, we just don't see it. When I was asking about like, how do white women get with white men?
Yeah. So, sorry, I was a little bit confused. If I also am autistic, and I have to make sure I'm not hiding behind that, but sometimes I feel like I'm missing things. So I wasn't sure if that response was to me saying dissociation. I wasn't trying to negate that, like, white women, certainly we have power and use it in horrible ways, right? But I think a lot of, like, white women being with white men, they just completely don't even attach that power to themselves. Like, they just don't think about it. They do anything to avoid thinking about it and taking accountability of ourselves. That's something I need to do that I've been noticing recently. I say themselves because I don't want to attach myself to that, but ourselves. And especially if it ties, like, I'm dating a white man now and trying to bring him into the fold because, of course, I'm in love with him and I feel that he has a really great heart, but he has to come into the fold here. And this is also something I started deconstructing. I'm not great with time, but fairly recently, in the last 2 years. And so it's just, what does this have to do with me? I think is where the dissociation comes from, of like, I can't see myself in this hole because they don't understand that white supremacy is everything and touches everything.
I think we infantilize.
Isn't it exhausting?
Say that.
I just want to say that. Isn't it exhausting dating white men? I said, isn't it exhausting dating white men? Because you're constantly teaching them something.
Facts. But I think that I think they do realize it. The fact that we have men up here that are white that see it tells me that it's possible that they can see it.
Oh, of course.
And there's many that are just, we see it in the comment section. They see it or they wouldn't be in here trying to get us to shut up. They just scroll. So there's power in what is happening in this space.
Yeah.
And they see it.
That's why
and they want to fight against it.
Why it's dissociation and not ignorance, because they know what's happening and they don't want to pay attention. They don't want to think about it. They will do anything to distract themselves.
Fainting Lady says, yes, it's exhausting like a job. It's like 3 full-time jobs.
Literally.
and
You're on mute.
Am I unmuted now?
No, you aren't, but Auntie
I'm mute. I'm just being black and just be like, child, it's too much work. I'm just like, that's why all of my relationships with white people have just crashed and burned. And most of it has to do with like white tea people always making me be the educator. Like right now, today I'm having fun doing it. And it's rare that I even would join anyone's live.
And you will be paid.
And thank you. Yeah, but it's like it's just exhausting. The other thing that like for me as a black femme in relationships with white men is that they refuse to really see how deeply white supremacist their community is. Like they're always like, oh, but I've known Joe since we were like kids. And I'm just like, yeah, but Joe just said a bunch of like slurs and he's misogynistic and he did this. It's like, yeah, but like he's my buddy. And like, so it's like, okay, well now do I break up with them? Do I give them no poom poom as a punishment? Do I teach them? Like what is the options here? And then it's like the next week, oh yeah, but my mom wants to come over. It's like, yeah, but your mom don't like me. Like she's never going to like me. Oh, but it's my mom. Like they're just constantly dragging you into the depths of white supremacist hell. And they just keep telling you that it's okay because they're with you. They're like, it's fine that we're going through hell and you're the only one experiencing all this hellish demony things because I'm here with you. And so my experience of your experience is like the same, right? Like, because I'm seeing you go through all of this, which is exactly like me going through it because like once a white person's with a black person, that black person's experience is now their experience because that's how that works in hierarchy. And like, the power grab, them constantly grabbing for power, always like the littlest things, just trying to like, and I'm also autistic. So sometimes the pattern recognition, I'm like, but you said you didn't like that. And they're like, oh, but I do like it. I'm like, but yesterday at 3:30, PM, you said like, and yeah, the autism really, and dating white men is non-compatible. That's why I'm like, good luck to you. Good luck, because that pattern recognition really will like kind of mess up your relationship because you can't not like, especially once you decolonize enough, you can't not see the cognitive dissonance coming out of their mouths. Like you can't unsee it. So that's why I asked that question. I'm just like, how? And then on the flip side, how the F do white men be with white women knowing y'all are horrible? Y'all have been horrible to your women. There's stories of white men eating their own women because she was mouthy. Y'all invented hysteria. Like you put your women in sanitariums if they're too yappy. Like you grape your own children. Like how do y'all sleep at night?
With a gun under the pillow, a lot of them.
Real question.
I was going to say with alcohol.
That seems to be a real question.
Yep, alcohol and drugs is one.
Medicated.
Self-medication.
I really got to drop off and get some work done, but I wanted to, give Auntie the respect that he deserves, and it's a pleasure to have met you. Y'all just give me at least 48 hours heads up before y'all ever put Auntie and Taz in the same room together, because the U.S. government will
For
try
real?
to colonize a new form of energy, and we ain't prepared for that yet. Give me 48 hours. Love y'all. I will see y'all
Bye,
later.
brother.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so to maintain the container, question is how do I contribute to oppression? So you just heard the question, how do white women have relationships with white men, and how do white men have relationships with white women? And from what we heard is lots of medication, lots of disassociation, lots of coping strategies that are given to you by your own culture. Okay, so it starts making plain why the value of eager, why the need for racial trauma centers, why the need for these kind of conversations, and a place to grieve your sense of loss. Because as you become vulnerable for the very first time, it is a terrifying experience of walking around questioning at any given time, when is justice going to touch me and I get obliterated? So that's a level of paranoia. I always feel like somebody's watching me. And it's not my anxiety, Toshi. So, feedback, because that's the purpose of this conversation. If white people are not talking to white people, then we're losing the, to borrow Albert Klieg. I know the Abrahamic religions, but to borrow Albert Klieg, then you just missed the whole point of spirituality. Because it's supposed to assist us in growth. Religion is for comfort, spirituality is for growth, to expand the nervous system so the nervous system can cope with choice.
Yeah.
So now, what's going on? How does it feel to be like, oh my God, my entire culture, everything I've been socialized into is designed to harm first myself and then those who are in my sphere of influence?
When I first realized this, I wanted to distance myself from everybody I knew and everything I knew. I cut off everyone. I had no patience or tolerance for another human being that looked like me. And I isolated myself to the point of depression and suicide. I shouldn't have said that on this. And I've seen that happen with my uncle, we've talked about before. My uncle did the same thing, but he was the Trump supporter side of that, you know? And he distanced himself from me and anything that had anything to do with what I'm talking about. And, you know, then you're left wondering what comes next, right? And then you come across someone like Royal Star or Auntie Feminist or Taz that start talking to you about the steps that you need to take, you know? And then, you know, you got to make the choices about what you're going to do. Part of mine was not pursuing my degree. So I have this degree where I could be in the government, I could be running nonprofits, and I don't want to do it. I didn't want to do it anymore. I saw how that fed into the whole system, and so I just took myself out. I started working gig economies, just, you know, little jobs that I could do on the side, just trying to make ends meet. It's hard to cut that cord. And I haven't cut it entirely, and I'm trying, you know, but it takes time too. Because I do have to make sure that I can still survive at the end of the day.
And that's the point, right? Notice
Y'all
you
have the
survive.
right to survive, absolutely.
You know, and I think that's what people hear when you talk about things like decolonizing, or you know, to sound like corporate speak, right? Shifting paradigms is if we start to take away this idea of things like ownership and really the fighting over resources as if they were limited in either me or you, it's a complete shift in our social structures. But what people hear is, give me my house. You're right. You should be homeless. I should have your things. That's the conversation that's heard. And I think that's where we end up with a roadblock.
I don't believe TikTok has closed captioning in live videos, Al.
That sucks.
Sorry about that. It's
Would be
just
nice.
the tools that we have. We'd love it, but it doesn't. And
Yeah,
a lot
they
of times
had, like
they,
a hot second, and then it went away.
I even have
It was
trouble
just, it was
getting
like on for like a
captionings.
month, and I was like, awesome, closed captioning for lives.
Well, I have like an auditory processing, and then I can't hear anything, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, well, even with
Tis life.
Remove, Distribute the Medicine tour, because it has themes of uncomfortability for white people, basically. No, no. They're reporting our live. Anyway, even the captions on our videos are not working over here right now.
Mhm.
It'll have like half of it, and then it'll just disappear, or it'll say something really weird that isn't even legible, you know. So I don't know. But yeah, they're trying to remove Bajorn, which isn't even up here, and Royal Star, which doesn't surprise me because it happens all the time.
It is a day ending in one.
Yes.
Yeah.
You didn't lose 17
It worked on
accounts
me.
for no
I'm starting to
reason.
fade in and out. So
Yeah. Well, we've been here for
correct.
over an hour and a half.
and
So
when they do this, and for doing this, because we're doing this, they have to protect themselves from us. That's what blows my mind. They want us to shut up. They don't want the oppression to stop. They want us to shut up. They want the injustice to stop, but not what they receive as far as deference. They just want the bad things. Stop with the violence, but I still need you to keep the grocery store, and I want my cell phone. And if other children have to be oppressed in order for me to have my cell phone, I don't care.
yeah, I don't have to think about that. I can choose to ignore it.
I was kind of excited because I know there's like 4 different Robs in Eager, but my partner's name is Rob, and he kind of had his breakthrough last night, and we were talking about the dehumanization of people that aren't white, any people that aren't white, and he's a big union guy. Like he's also autistic, and so his special interest is unions and anything to do with it. Like that's all the information he consumes. And I was like, if there had been a boycott of your vapes, you would have quit it immediately. Immediately. Nothing, but it's made with child slave labor in the Congo, and you don't give it. I mean, like, oh, I'm gonna try to quit, because that's just not. And so he finally kind of caught on to that dissonance, and that kind of like pushed him in further. But it's just that's the dissonance.
You need to get paid for that labor.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I said you need to get paid for that labor. No. You taught him a lesson, a valuable lesson. You cracked open his mind and forced knowledge into there. And he will be a slightly more compassionate human because of it. And that's honestly, that's traumatic right there for you, that you have to do this. And yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah. How do white women get be with white men? That was the question.
I couldn't. I finally said no.
Constantly teaching. Yeah. It's I am an ex-union person. I was really, really into unions before the pandemic, and then got into unions and then realized that they are just big old balls of white supremacy. That is just horrible. Of the worst white people I have ever encountered are hard. I mean, like, vote blue no matter who, beat it over your head. They have all the paraphernalia. They know the WII history, left, right, and center. I feel like that Malcolm X quote that he talks about, like he would rather sit down with like someone in like a KKK uniform and have a conversation with them than a Democrat, because at least he could get somewhere with the person in the white hood, is the feeling of being in a union. I'm just like, no talking to these people. They are completely convinced that they are not racist, that they are not supremacists, because they have collectively bargained. I was like, using capitalism again is not going to fix any of the problems. You cannot solve these social problems with capitalism. I'm like a year and this is March, 3 months late on my union dues, and I'm just gonna tell them, I'm like, look, I'm black, I'm homeless, I'm this. I quit my job being a professor because I, as a black person, was seeing how I was contributing to oppression by being a professor. And so I had to let that go. Like, we're decolonizing, again, like I said, is not just for one group of people. It's all of us. All of us have to look at how we are oppressing people. But yeah, no, I'm so sorry. That is a struggle. That is a real.
something I'm experiencing right now because currently trying to form union at my job.
A little triggered.
And let's get the nervous system back in place. I've had to do that a few times in this conversation so far. But I'm currently trying to get a union because I'm always very open to being wrong, but very open to being wrong in this because I've heard that rhetoric a few times. In my mind, I still feel like I'm doing the most good. But anyways, the people who were the most union at front before I started doing all the actual labor of forming a union were a bunch of white liberals in the education sphere. And so I actually started going through because they were going to place all of security because the building is segregated and security is all black people. And so I was like, oh, we actually have to start doing this so these people don't lose their paycheck so they can survive. And all of a sudden they're really mad that I went with the Teamsters and not with some other fucking union that deals with something else. And it's just like, this is so dumb. Like, that's not what this is about. It's not about you. You're already getting paid. They get paid more also of the part-time people than anyone else. And it's just like, and now they were kind of like, oh, we're not sure if we're going to vote yes. And it's just like, you were the one that started talking about it in the very beginning. And we're like, so...
We do that
and then
all
when
the
someone
time.
actually tries to do things... It was one of the most deeply infuriating things.
Remember when I told you about
that?
Remember I told you about that 50-51 group? They did their list of demands, and they never put in police brutality. They had racial groups instead of, and at the end, and didn't specify. I'm like, can we give Black, Brown, and Indigenous people their, the right of being up front since they've suffered from this stuff the most and the longest? Can we do that? Can we give them a respect that they've fought for these things by adding them at the beginning? It is a thing that white folks do all the time. We always put ourselves ahead every single time. Anyway.
And when it gets pointed out, they now have to protect themselves from the people who pointed it out because it makes them feel so bad.
Yep.
You're right.
Well, no, and I had this one specific woman, and she used to be in security, so she was the only one that was kind of more open to it. She's like, oh yeah, I know how badly they're treated. Also just with like the class separation issue thing. And she was going to speak at the hearing, and then she like weaked out on it. And it was just like, she kept saying, oh, I'm not scared. And then she texted me. She was like, yeah, I don't know if this is the best decision for me. And it's like, it's not. It's probably not. You are putting your career at risk. That is the point. You are a white-bodied person. Like, you are the one that's supposed to be... This is also the same person that we had to explain just because she had Mexican heritage meant she was not seen as, like, as not a white woman, which was just... wonderful long conversation.
I need a shirt. I need a shirt that says, we all need to wear shirts that say this, like Puerto Rican, not a race. Mexican, not a race. Irish, not a race. Polish, not a race. Like, because that's I think that is actually a part of why these conversations, we really struggle, because we don't even freaking know what race is. People be saying, I'm half Italian and half glacier, and I'm just like, okay, well, you told me you're from this part of the world and this other part of the world that's very cold, but that is nothing to do with your race. It is a construct, so don't worry about it. It has a lot of meaning, and it also has no meaning at the same time. Like, that's like the silliness of race. It's like, it was created by one white man who was like, wouldn't it be great to put us at the top and make everybody else just like
Herbert Spencer,
everything else below us? And so, right? It's like there's only five races, and and also the white men are going to constantly be re-changing what race means, like who is in which category, who is in that. But like, yeah, no, that person was a white person. How you look is your race.
Yes.
It really is that simple. I'm like, the white man that created it was not trying to give us all this language and beautiful poetry and like, I'm African American and I have all of this beauty and melanin. Like, he won't care about that. He was like, listen, Negroes over there, slanty-eyed Asians over there, and everybody else over there. That was it. Like, it really is purely based on how you look.
Yeah.
And that is like, people really, I'm like, people love colorism. No, they love them some colorism. Absolutely love ranking people by color. But then the second you actually talk about like, hey, so just because you're Mexican, like your people are from Mexico, doesn't mean you're not a white person.
Correct.
And you're like, what? I'm like, are you indigenous? No. Are you Asian? No. Are you black? You probably actually are a lot of black, because there's a whole bunch of black folks in Mexico, if you know the history and all that stuff and how we moved about and conquistadors and all that stuff. Like, you probably actually have a lot of blackness in you, but phenotypically, you are a whitey person. And just accept it.
Correct.
Just accept it. Like, I feel like some black folks just need to accept that you're going to hear the word black.
Yeah. All right.
You
so
trying to
we
go?
are here at 2 hours, and we usually only go for about an hour and a half, because it's a heavy topic for a lot of people, and we don't want to start any more crash outs today. Anyway, I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you, Auntie Feminist and Royal Star Mastery, for coming in and giving us your guidance. I'm sure that you'll receive some compensation for that. We're going to be here again tomorrow. We're going to do this again tomorrow, Royal Star.
It was so nice meeting you.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll be here tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. So thank you so much again, and we're out.
Bye. Nice meeting everybody.
Bye.